much longer.
AATBirds Weekly Report is the Eagle news, notes, and analysis you need. It's all birds, all the time.
How about them Eagles?
And how about them Eagles? So we got a game going on this Sunday. We are back. We haven't been on probably for about a week, right? No, it's been 2 weeks actually, because we didn't do last week because it was the
we did not do the preseason game.
It's almost like we've been, we haven't done it for a month with the way we look, both kind of disheveled and too much facial hair.
I mean, I have a very kempt beard. You, sir.
I think we both need to kind of do what we have to do in terms of, So whatever. But we got some news. Of course, the whole Jalen Hurts thing. Everyone complained about that. He did practice today, limited. So we'll get into that. We'll get into the matchup between the Packers. It's going to be interesting. I have a couple interesting takes on the Green Bay Packers. Of course, a game the Eagles played, first game of the year in Brazil. But there's going to be some familiarity in the aspects of that. But I think that's just about as familiar as you're going to get with it because it was a long time ago. But Chip, how are we doing here? Are we ready for some playoff Eagles football?
I mean, I've been ready for Eagles playoff football. I was so ready for Eagles playoff football, that I reached out to the Eagles organization and insisted that they sit all the starters last week, just so that they were as ready as I was for some playoff football. And I'm really glad they decided to listen. I think it was a good decision. I know there are people who are very butthurt about it. Hell, I had to yell at my own mother because Saquon should have had the record. No, Saquon's going for a championship. So let's pump the brakes there, Bonnie. I think that the Eagles made the right decision. Yes, it would have been very cool if you got the record, but it's a hell of a lot cooler to be in a parade.
The injuries that you had seen, I understand. Yes. I understand though. Anyone could get injured anytime. We get that. But the fact of it is, you saw Zay Flowers go down with an injury. Now, Green Bay and the Ravens, they were playing their starters because there were seeding implications. So I get that. But still, the Green Bay Packers lost their best receiver, best deep threat, Christian Watson, to an ACL. Zay Flowers, it's not looking great of him to play against the Steelers come on Saturday night. So that's a pretty big loss in their passing game.
Hell, the Packers almost lost their starting quarterback.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was nothing to gain other than the record. And like I said, if Saquon was going to play, then you had to start the offensive line to get it done as well. And that's not what this is about. It is not what this is about. Because you are putting a lot of people at risk. And because you are absolutely going to run the ball, they are stacking the box every time. It was the absolute right call. And if Saquon had gotten hurt or one of the offensive line had gotten hurt, Nick Sirianni's head would have been called for.
And now we did get to see a couple things on Sunday. We saw, Dallas Goedert come back, which is nice. Have him,
that
get a little
kind of worried me. That worried me. I was like, all right, okay, he's back. Get him out.
Yeah. But that's going to be very beneficial to, one, the intermediate passing game, two, the blocking, being able to have him block and be able to be in that run game action. So it's good to see him come back. It was nice also to see two Eagles get their first career touchdowns, and EJ Jenkins and Anaya Smith. So, that stuff was good. The backups beat the Giants, so it's always good too. Eagles 14 wins, 14-3 finished the season. But looking at this matchup coming up with the Green Bay Packers, listen, the Green Bay Packers aren't a bad football team, and they're a solid football team. They've just struggled a little bit with teams, with winning records. And in case in point, look at their division against the Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. They were 0-4 against them, and they, of course, lost to the Eagles week 1. So it's going to be a true test. The Eagles are a team that is very it's great defensively. As you see on the bottom there, they're ranked the number one defense for the first time since 1991. Total defense, I think they're first in pass defense. So they were number one in a lot of categories. They were second by a tenth of a point in points per game allowed. So the defensive side of the ball, and we saw a little bit of that week one, but again, they were getting their bearings, a bad field. So there was a lot in there, but listen, you have to really take a true look at this Philadelphia Eagles team and look what they can do offensively and defensively against a team like the Packers, where they can somewhat try to exploit. And again, it's going to be tough for the Packers without Christian Watson. But the one thing with them is defense is going to have to be is to stop the run game and to be able to factor in trying to get them in third and longs, make Jordan Love have to beat you with his arm, which, he can do. He's a very solid throwing quarterback, but again, he has struggled at times this year, but that's what you want to do. You want to be able to put him in third and longs. I think that's one thing is a key emphasis for the Eagles, looking at this in their game plan.
I think that, when these two teams played in Brazil at the beginning of the season, neither team had really played their starters in the preseason. Everybody was very, very rusty. Like you mentioned, the bad field, the national and international implications. I mean, it wasn't a very good football game. And it was when this team was still the Eagles were trying to get their bearings right of what they wanted to be. Since then, this team has come an absolute long way. Now, so have the Packers. The Packers are a good football team. But when you look at what they don't have, I mean, we already mentioned Christian Watson. He's done. Jair Alexander, not playing. He's on injured reserve. I mean, he's done. So there are definite weaknesses to the Packers. Now, mind you, the division the Packers played in was exceptionally tough this year. So, I mean, it's a playoff game. So it's the any given Sunday mentality. I just think if the Eagles play like they have kind of grown into playing, I think they're going to be in good shape. I mean, they are incredibly healthy going into this playoff game, which a lot of other teams cannot say.
So, Chip,
that's big.
I want to put it to you this way too.
I'm ready.
When you take a look at top 10 offenses in points per game this season, okay? So the Green Bay Packers, of course, have played Detroit twice, which they're number one. They played Minnesota twice. They're number 9. They played the Eagles, who's number 7. Now, they've lost every one of those games. And the next closest team that they played at the top 10 scoring offense would be the Arizona Cardinals at 23.5 points, and they're ranked 12th. So when you take a look at who they've played, like they played the Colts, they played the Titans early in the year, they played the Rams without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, they played, of course, the Cardinals. The Texans have struggled at times this year. Jaguars, Bears, 49ers, Dolphins, Seattle, like Saints. They've played some teams that were not very good. But if you look at the top 10 and then what they did against those teams, giving up just about 30 points a game against those teams. And then when you look at the Eagles, they played Baltimore, who's ranked 3rd. They played Tampa Bay, who's ranked 4th. Now, of course, Tampa Bay game was early in the season, but still they lost to them. But they played Washington twice. They played Cincinnati. They've played Green Bay. So they've played a ton of those games. And out of those games, they've lost 2. So they lost to Washington and they lost to Tampa.
Johnny,
they held Baltimore.
Last year, Green Bay finished where in the division?
For the NFC North?
Yeah.
Green Bay finished 2nd. They were 9-8 last year.
So just like the Eagles. So I think that you're seeing what a second place schedule looks like. Now, it just so happens that the Philadelphia Eagles came across tougher conferences and tougher divisions in their second place schedule than the Green Bay Packers did. But look, the Green Bay Packers can put up points. There's no denying it. And like we just mentioned, the NFC North was very competitive this year. Freakishly so, actually. But the Philadelphia Eagles, as you have on the screen here, have the number 1 ranked defense for the first time since 1991. So it's great that the Eagles scored as many points as they did. But you can
The
with
Packers
this defense,
the Packers are ranked 5th in total defense.
and that's what I was going to say is that you can win games by a score of 7-3, 10-7 because of how good these defenses are.
So, but the thing when you look at Green Bay as a whole, and one thing that we saw in week 1 that you're going to have to, it's going to be an emphasis, a key emphasis for the Eagles to be able to, not have happen again is the turnovers. Jalen threw 2
Correct.
early interceptions. You got to make sure that you're not doing that, because also when you take a look at basically turnovers per game, they are second in the NFL at 1.8 turnovers a game. They're behind there's a 3-way tie between Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Buffalo at the top. The Eagles are 6th. They're at 1.5. So essentially they're 2 more down because those first are three guys. So they are essentially tied for first is there. So second, they're 4th. They're tied for 4th with a couple of teams at 1.5. So the big thing I think in this game is going to be turnovers. Like if Green Bay comes out and they have an early turnover and the Eagles are able to get up early, whether it be, 10-0 or 14-0 or some type of, early deficit for the Green Bay Packers, I think that's going to prove vital for the Eagles. But I think also what it's going to do is it's going to put Green Bay in a hole that they may not be able to climb out of. I think if you reverse it, look at the other way around, say the Eagles happen to go down, 10-0. I think there's a way that because of the way this team has been of climbing themselves out of it. So I think that's one thing to really look at when you look early in this game, because the Eagles recently have played pretty well to start games. They've scored early to start games that they haven't early in the year. So if that's a true test and something that we start seeing more common going into the playoffs, it's going to prove dividends for them, because it's going to be, a big time key factor, especially if the defense stays at the level that they've been playing at, because that's just going to put teams, into a hole that Eagles are going to be able to clamp down on and do what they do best.
Yeah. And if you look at what these teams were back when they played at the beginning of the season, the Eagles had just gotten a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, who wasn't really fully allowed to utilize his weapons. Like Saquon Barkley had a good game, but he had nothing compared to what he has become. The team was still reeling off of all of their losses at the end of last season and then starting to see that meltdown again. Mm-hmm. It was a home game that wasn't a home game. I mean, you lose some of the excitement of playing at the Link when it's a home game in Brazil. So I don't want to negate the fact that this is a home game being played in Philadelphia in a playoff atmosphere. This is the matchup that people wanted to see. And look, for everything, I mean, Jordan Love had a really good season. I still don't think that he is the world's greatest quarterback. And I think that the way that, we mentioned Jair Alexander is out. That is a key defensive loss for the Packers.
So you talk about Jair Alexander. So he has missed the last, I think it was like 4 or 5 games, maybe a little more than that, 4 or 5 games. And then they finally just put him on IR because he kept re-aggravating his knee injury. And then, they did a procedure and they placed him on IR.
Yeah, he's done. The only way he plays is if that team makes the Super Bowl. And I don't think that the Green Bay Packers are making the Super Bowl. He is a huge loss for that Packers defense.
And listen, the Packers defense, so the Eagles have some really good rookies that we know of on the defensive side of the ball. The Packers do as well. Now, there is some things to monitor when you're looking at the Packers injury report. Their big run stuffer, TJ Slayton, was a new ankle injury. He didn't practice. So that's something to keep an eye on, especially with the Eagles trying to run the ball, be able to do that.
It's the playoffs. Everybody's going to play.
Like, again, it all depends on but Edgerrin Cooper, their linebacker, who's been taking over some snaps for Quay Walker. He's been battling illness and an injury. So, and then I think their one Zane Alexander, I think his name is, he is a safety who's in concussion protocol. So he's still in protocol there. So there's something to keep an eye on. And then they have Evan Williams, who's played really well, even though young. So Cooper and Williams have been really, really good for them defensively. So again, they're not a bad defensive team. They are
No.
again, we saw it. We saw them on that what was it, Friday? Yeah, it was a Friday night game. So
Oh, so weird.
listen, they are a good defensive team. This thing, to me, I don't think it's going to be a high scoring battle. It's going to come down to, of course, who makes mistakes, and if the Eagles are able to force some turnovers and get some mistakes, it could really prove the difference in this ball game.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it being a knockdown, drag-out brawl. I mean, these are two teams that win and lose games in the trenches. But again, since that Friday night, all those weeks ago, the Eagles have stopped turning the ball over a lot. The Eagles have been getting more turnovers. The Eagles defense has learned to play the Fangio way. And as collectively as a whole, we've seen, Zach Bond blossom into what he's become. We've seen Nakobe Dean blossom into what he's become. We've seen, Quinyon Mitchell become such an incredible lockdown corner that the only reason why did not, even in my mind, close to defensive rookie of the year is he doesn't have any turnovers. He keeps getting them stolen from him. You know what I mean? CJ Gardner-Johnson literally ripped an interception out of his hands. CJ Gardner-Johnson has become an absolute monstrosity in the secondary. Cooper DeJean didn't even play in that first game.
No, it was Avonte Maddox.
You know what I'm saying? So obviously the teams have familiarity with each other, but these are two very different teams than when they played each other this year. And I do kind of like the full circle idea of it all, where we started our season there, and now someone's going to end their season in this matchup. The same way the Bucs and the Commanders started their season with this matchup, and someone's going to end their season. Somehow the NFL kind of got it right, through accident. But again, it's going to be a great game. It is a classic matchup. And I'll be honest, I like when it is because, it's a good time for a football game.
So another thing to look at another thing I like to look at is penalties per game. Because of course that's going to tell you, of course, a lot of the bad teams commit a lot more penalties. There's a couple teams that are in the playoffs that are towards the end of the list. Now Green Bay is somewhat middle of the pack. They're tied for 18th in penalties per game. Eagles are 11th. So there isn't middle of the pack. Yeah, middle of the pack. You like that. So that's definitely something, keep an eye on. Of course, with seeing some of the games, I know recently the Commanders game with some penalties that didn't fare too well for the Eagles. Of course, you want to make sure that, especially come playoff time, they could absolutely kill you. You want to make sure that you have level head and you make sure that you are focused. But again, that's another thing too to keep an eye on when you're looking at this, this game. But listen, I just think, it's a big loss. Christian Watson's a huge loss for them.
Huge loss. It's
just, again, it comes down to the turnover aspect. If the Eagles play turnover-free football like they have been in recent weeks, really ever since after the bye, it seems like they've been playing pretty sound football and they're able to run the ball. Again, it could be almost like the Pittsburgh game or like the games where they've basically worn down their opponent, and at the end of the game, it's let's just run the clock out and let's do what we do.
And, again, I hate to keep bringing up that Friday night game, but let's look at some of the other things that go into play here. It was before the Philadelphia Eagles really got comfortable with what works with Saquon Barkley, right? But at that point, they didn't really have an offensive identity. More importantly, it was their first game with this brand new offensive line post Jason Kelce, right? Mm-hmm. So now you've had all these games with Cam Jurgens leading the line and doing what he needs to do. And everybody, that line is still arguably the best offensive line in football, blocking for the rushing champion this year.
Yeah.
As long as Jalen Hurts continues to manage and make the plays when needed and throw his receivers open, rather than waiting for them to get open. Like, he was too timid a large portion of the season. If he cleans that up, I mean, this Eagles team is arguably the best team in football right now. They just got to play that way.
Exactly. Play your kind of football, your brand of football, and the outcome should be what we've seen in recent months for them. So it's going to be tough. What is one thing, you can talk the whole playoffs if you want to go anywhere on this. One thing that you're intrigued by, whether it's this game, is there a certain aspect of it or a certain aspect in the playoffs that you're intrigued?
The playoffs in general?
Yeah, it could be any other game like this weekend that intrigues you, or something that you're looking at, or something in this game that you're keeping your eyes on, that
there's
focusing on.
So much. I mean, this game, you're looking for the Eagles to play higher than the level of their opponent, because I do not think the Packers are in the same echelon as the Eagles right now. If you're talking about the rest of the NFC, I'm curious to know if what the Lions are doing is sustainable, because the injuries are really piling up.
They did get Alex Anzalone back, so that helps them a little bit on the defense.
And you saw that it helped, but that team is still piling up injuries. If you're looking at the AFC side of the ball, is Josh Allen finally going to play good playoff football? Who's going to knock off the Chiefs? Because I need the Chiefs to get their asses kicked. I think there's a lot of kind of cool storylines. Like, when does Bo Nix hit the ceiling? Because he's had a really awesome rookie year. Arguably, I mean, he made the conversation for offensive rookie of the year with Jaden Daniels really, really close. I still think Jaden Daniels gets the nod because of just how drastic the Commanders' change was. Does Jaden Daniels perform well in the playoffs? Does Baker Mayfield play well in the playoffs? I think there's a lot of really cool storylines outside of the playoffs. God, I love that Brian Dable is still the coach at the Giants. God, I love that Mike McCarthy is still the coach of the Cowboys. They won't let him interview with the Bears.
Well, on the 14th, it doesn't matter. He can be interviewed by anybody. So again,
he's an active head coach, though. He's not fired. You can't interview as an active head coach.
Well, once his contract runs out on the 14th, then he can.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stories. I was actually surprised there weren't more firings. I mean, they got Antonio Pierce today. Doug should have been an immediate fire. Dable should have been an immediate fire. That is crazy to me. But hey, the Giants are going to Giant. The Cowboys are going to Cowboy. And I'm just here so I don't get fined.
It's going to be a fun game. All these games are going to be pretty interesting. I'm really intrigued to see the now I know people think it's going to be a one-sided matchup, but I am pretty intrigued to watch the Pittsburgh Ravens playoff game, just because this is the third time.
It's going to be a physical game.
Yeah, it's going to be the third time playing each other. So listen, it's going to be a matchup, and that I think people should definitely keep their eyes on, because, and you know what? I'll save what I'm going to say. I'm going to save
I like that like clockwork the Texans play when they play in the playoffs.
That was
great. It is
it's
hysterical.
Same time.
Because nobody cares about the Houston Texans. I think it's worth monitoring the Rams game, because unfortunately right now Los Angeles is dealing with some extremely difficult wildfires. They're going to have to move that game to Arizona, where they'll have exactly the same amount of Rams fans they would if it was played in LA.
That's true there.
I know. Sorry. I mean, it's as Lizzo said, the truth hurts.
Terrible. Well,
he's good, Doc.
This is going to bring us to the segment where I'm going to talk about what I was just mentioning, and it is the Ulecka Locks.
It's time for the Ulecka Locks of the week. Who's your lock?
Alrighty, and it brings me to my Ulecka Lock, talking about the Pittsburgh and Baltimore Ravens. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers pull the upset and beat the Baltimore Ravens.
Ooh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think and again, I was looking at a couple of these.
Don't worry. In like another couple minutes when you're finished, we're actually going to go through the playoff bracket.
Oh, good, because I'm struggling here. I mean, there's so many, like, I worry that the Vikings aren't going to win because, you know, they got some mollywopped. I'm going to go with, I don't know if I like this, but I'm going to do it. I think the Commanders will upset the Bucks.
Interesting.
I do. And again, I hate to say it because I'm not a Commanders fan by any means. Obviously, I am a Eagles fan through and through. But I called it preseason that the Commanders were going to make the playoffs, that they were really only a solid quarterback away and a solid coach away. And, I mean, they performed way higher than expectations. And I just think that while the Bucks are impressive behind Baker Mayfield, I do think that the Commanders have enough to beat the Buccaneers.
So before we do our predictions here, our playoff predictions, let's each give the prediction for this game this weekend with the Eagles and the Packers. I'll start. I think it's going to be a close game just because, like, you got the cold. It's just I just feel like it's playoff football. It's going to be a close game. I have the Eagles winning 24-20 and beating and moving on to the divisional round.
I think the Eagles are going to put up some points. Okay. I think it's going to be a slight shootout, but then you rely on the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles have an incredible defense. I would say maybe the number one ranked defense in the NFL for the first time since 1991, if I was to just, throw that kind of thing out there. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win. I have them winning 30-21.
Okay. Not too far off. Which brings us to the playoff predictor.
World's smallest screen.
World's smallest screen. It's what it is. It's what it is. Small screen for you, which I will tell you. So I'll have you start. Of course, you have the Eagles winning, so I will put that there. And
you do a thing. Look at that.
Yeah. And then you picked Washington to beat Tampa Bay, correct?
I did.
So there's that. And then the Minnesota-LA game. What do you have there?
Minnesota's going to win that game. LA, number one, is not as good of a team. And number two, they're dealing with all of this distractions and everything. Minnesota's going to win this game.
Which now brings us to the AFC. Bills, Broncos.
So if the Broncos were playing pretty much anybody else, I would have taken the upset. But Josh Allen will be able to will them through wild card weekend.
Okay. Steelers, Ravens.
Ravens are going to win this football game. They just have too much talent, and the Russ bus gets parked at some point.
Gotcha.
He has not looked good these past couple weeks.
No, he has not. Chargers, Texans.
So this is a tough one for me because the Texans have definitely – they started off so strong, and then they went through a decline, and a lot of their weapons are no longer, able to play. I mean, obviously they lost Stephon Diggs. They lost Tank Dell. Tank Dell was the one that got hurt, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're down. I mean, they're down receivers, but by that point, they already clinched. And then on the flip side of things, Justin Herbert is throwing to whoever's still left available. So I think that both of these teams are not very good anymore. So I'm going to trust the playoff experience, the championship experience. I think the Chargers upset the Texans.
All right, which now brings us, we'll stay on the AFC side here. Chargers at the Chiefs, divisional matchup here. What?
Chiefs.
Okay. Ravens at Bills.
This is called who is going to try and beat Patrick Mahomes next week. I think that the Ravens – see, here's the thing. Lamar Jackson is throwing to Mark Andrews. He's got Derrick Henry. He's got Josh Allen is throwing to Mac Hollins. Okay? He's throwing to Mac Hollins. Ravens win
Oh,
this.
he's got some more people. He's got some other guys.
He's throwing to Mac Hollins.
You said Ravens? Now on the NFC side, Washington at Detroit.
Detroit.
Okay. Minnesota at Philly.
Eagles.
Okay.
The matchup everybody wants.
AFC side here. Ravens at Kansas City. Rematch of last year's AFC Championship game, just in a different place.
I'm going to save you any more clicks. It's the Bird Bowl.
So Ravens, Eagles. Who wins?
Go Birds.
Eagles. Boom.
That's fancy.
That is pretty fancy.
I won't do it again. Oh. We'll just change anyone that you disagree with.
No, I'll just go back
We'll
in
refresh.
and just do this. Look at that. Oh.
Okay, cool.
So, of course, I have the Eagles winning. I think Tampa Bay comes away with the victory,
Okay.
and I think Minnesota wins. So that's the NFC side.
Oh, I hate that second round matchup for us.
Yeah, I figured
We can't get past the Bucks. Todd Bowles he has the Eagles number.
Well, they did beat him on that Monday night, and this will be at home. So let's just get to the AFC side here. So the Bills, I got the Bills winning. Of course, I got the Steelers, and I have the Chargers. Steelers at Chiefs. Chargers at Bills. Then on this side, I think Minnesota beats Detroit after getting some revenge on them.
I think the injuries would bug up, yeah.
I think the Eagles come away with the win against Tampa Bay. They are able to get Tampa Bay is very beat up in this, especially in the secondary, very beat up. So I think they're going to be able to come away with the victory against the Bucks. And then the AFC side, I think the Bills beat the Chiefs.
Finally.
The Eagles beat the Bills, and it is Bills, Eagles. Listen, I'm not going to go against the Eagles here. Come on. I'm not doing it. Then I have the Eagles.
We put a lot of thought into some of those picks, and then we both went like straight Homer City.
Yeah, okay. We did. But again,
I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it.
Listen, I'm fine with it too. It is what it is. And I'd like to have another parade. I'd like to be there. Probably the week after, Thursday, sometime in February, seeing them go down Broad Street, celebrating. That would be a very, very fun time. So that's what I'd like to see. We'll see. Hopefully Eagles Sunday, 4:30 on Fox. We'll be able to see them play the Packers and get this show started. Yeah, Tom Brady and Kevin Burkhardt. So we have that, as we always do. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We always end it with a very special and playoff edition of Go Birds.
Dear God, go Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time. All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.